everybody. This is Greg Traynor, and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. This week, I have my special guest, Tom McNamara. He is with Cross Country Mortgage, and he is a certified divorce lending professional. Welcome to the podcast, Tom.
Hey, thanks, Greg. I'm pleased to be here.
Great. Tom, you and I have worked together for probably 23, 24 years in the real estate industry. Trust you impeccably to my clients to help them through the home buying and refinancing process. Today, we're talking about something very specific, though. I am a certified divorce real estate expert and help in medium to high conflict cases. Most of our clients are attorneys who refer their clients to us to help them through a tough time in life. And one of the very important first steps that we have with their clients is to see exactly how we can help them either buy out their spouse or if they just need to sell the property. And on the buyout, Tom, that's where you come along as a certified divorce lending professional to help them and identify if they're able to purchase the home from their spouse and refinance that home on their own. So I guess the first step in our podcast today is just asking you to explain what a certified divorce lending professional is and how it differentiates you from other lending professionals.
Okay, I'm going to read you the textbook answer. It is a certified divorce lending professional brings the financial knowledge and the expertise of a solid understanding of the connection between divorce and family law, financial and tax planning, and mortgage planning strategies as they relate to the property and mortgage financing in a divorce situation. So that's a lot of words that are all jumbled together. Basically, I am the expert or the certified expert because I've taken the classes and listened to all the podcasts for the certified divorce lenders. That there's much more to it than just saying I'm going to keep the house, and there's much more to it than you have a Roth IRA. There's some tax implications on some, and you're going to keep this and do this. So it's basically someone that's dug deeper into the situation to make your situation go smooth.
Let's talk about some examples of how having a certified divorce lending professional could help in a situation where the folks are going through a divorce. I know there's different types of qualifications and different ways to structure a buyout of your spouse. Mm-hmm. What are some of the pitfalls if you are working with a lending professional or loan officer who isn't familiar with some of those rules? What are some of those pitfalls that an expert can help you through and avoid?
The first step is vetting the house. You got to see, is there any equity in the house and what type of financing is on the house? So if it's like a VA loan, who has the eligibility? Is the departing person, maybe the husband or the wife, whoever's departing? If they have the VA loan in their name, the eligibility, they're not going to be able to get probably another loan until that loan's paid off. So you're going to create, can you assume this loan, or can you, do a cash out refi to pay debt off? There's so many things. You just have to really assess the situation of what they're in and unwind everything to their liking or to what they can agree upon.
Got it. And what are the common loan types that you see that they use the most common?
The most common is a conventional or an FHA loan.
Gotcha. And they're using those is it a refinance? Is it considered a refinance at that point, or since they already own it, or is it a purchase type of loan?
If they're on title and deed, if the wife or whoever the departing resident, whoever, depends on who's on title and deed. Sometimes there's a boyfriend and girlfriend and they're not married and it's splitting up. Of course, that wouldn't be a divorce, but most of it's conventional, and a lot of times it's cash out if they're going to pay off debt, or it's considered an equity takeout, which if say, hey, I owe you part of the equity, you owe the departing spouse part of the equity in a house, and that's actually considered a rate and term refinance. It's not considered a cash out, which gives us more favorable loan terms.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I've heard those terms quite a bit, where you have a rate and term refinance, which just means that all you're doing is you're converting that financing over into your name only. and changing the rate and the term of the loan. But that cash out has different implications too on what interest rates you get and how much you can actually take out. Is that correct?
That is correct. And when you cash out, you can only go to 80% across the board on your loan, on loan to value, meaning if your house is worth 100,000, you can only get up to 80,000 to pay off the existing lien in any cash out. So if you do an equity takeout, you can go all the way up to 97%. It's considered
Gotcha.
rate and term, and it gives you a little more wiggle room for more equity to split for the house.
Right, because if in that situation that you just gave, 100,000, the property's worth 100,000 on a typical cash out, you can only go to 80%. That means that there's $20,000 of equity. If you have to buy out that other spouse, if you use that cash out type loan instead of the rate and term, then you're going to miss the mark and you're going to have to come up with $20,000 out of your pocket to split that or pay your spouse off. Is that correct?
Correct, unless the one retaining the house is okay with having their money in equity. You know what I mean? They can actually say,
Right.
"Hey, I'm going to leave you the house, and you can have this 20,000 in equity. That's part of your earnout."
Right. And what we see sometimes, if they do just um, the 80/20, they're trading other assets. Sometimes maybe there's other personal property or investments that they're using. But it's the reason why I wanted to kind of go through that exercise is if you're going through a divorce and you're needing to get that financing to buy out your other spouse, it's important that you talk through the situation with your lending professional and that your lending professional has the knowledge on which loan type to put you through to make sure that you're following the court orders that your attorneys are actually writing for you and that those can be achievable.
Right. And another thing is you got to make sure the court orders are obtainable.
Right.
Meaning the person that's staying in the house, are they working? Have they collected? Are they collecting child support? Are they going to collect it for more than 3 years? There's so many more moving parts. It's like a big puzzle that has to be put together, and it all has to work because at the end of 2 years, if you're not refinanced, you could be held in contempt.
Right. And two, you just brought up a great point. It's probably better before our attorney partners write that order that they consult you after you've done that pre-approval, pre-qualification for the buyer, and that we've had a chance as the real estate agents to do our analysis on what the property value is. So really the first step out of the gate is let's get an idea of what this property's worth, get a price opinion from the certified divorce real estate expert, and have your client talk to you, the certified divorce lending professional, to become pre-qualified. That way, the attorney can actually write an order or an agreement that's actually achievable by the parties. We've seen it so many times that the horse gets in front of the cart and an order's written, and then all of a sudden we find out that the person can't possibly qualify for a new loan.
Yeah, a lot of people think that signing a quick claim deed over and it's done, and they say, well, he's no longer or she's no longer on the house, but they're still on the mortgage and they're still on that note that they're paying the bank. And a lot of credit gets damaged if one party is responsible that's not in the house, or even in the house. If that party doesn't make that payment on time, it hurts both of your credit scores.
Right. So if you're interested in getting the process started, how does the application process work for an individual that's going through a divorce? What are the steps?
My application process is the same. Especially go to the link, let's gather the information, and then we have a phone consult on what we're actually trying to achieve. What's the timeline? Have you talked to your attorney yet? Who is your attorney? Because these are not fun loans to do. These are not, usually I have a, happy time, and this is a
stressful time.
Stressful, and minds are changed and people get into arguments, and then, I have to remain neutral and, not get emotionally involved in any of this. So gathering the facts is the first thing. Going to take my loan app. It's an online loan app, or we can do it over the phone, and just gathering the information is the first steps, and then trying to set the goals of exactly what we're trying to achieve.
Gotcha. What factors do lenders consider when they determine the eligibility of that borrower for the loan?
They're the same factors that you qualify with the debt to income ratio, which is usually up to 40% on the home debt to income, and up to 50% with decent credit. Those are the FHA allows a little bit more loosely their debt ratio and income. So it's like a regular loan, except there is a cash out as in an equity takeout, and they have to qualify accordingly to Fannie Freddie guidelines.
So their income, their debt, their credit
Mhm.
score, what assets they have, what is, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, just because the judge says, or there's an agreement in the divorce file that you're not responsible for maybe a credit card or a car payment or the mortgage loan, what does that mean to you as a lender, that actual court order?
Well, the court order really means that that's their business. It's separate, that they can argue or get along with and pay it or not pay it. But for me, whoever's on that note or whoever's on that debt or that credit card really needs to see through that it's being paid. Even though the husband's supposed to pay it, let's say in an instance, if he doesn't, it's still going to harm your credit, and you got to go back to the credit bureau, and it takes forever to get that fixed. But if the court order says so that a certain party is responsible for that debt, then it can be a court thing. It can be you owe them money for damages, and then you got to sue each other. You're supposed to follow the court order, but we follow the credit order, meaning
Right.
if you're on that credit, it's going to be bad if it does not get paid.
Right. So that's a mistake that we see so many different times when a client comes to us to be able to take the next step and they say, hey, Greg, we just got a divorce about a year ago. We want to go find a new home. And then we send them over to you and you find that there's a mortgage on a different home that they still owe. And the response to us is always, well, the judge said that my other spouse has to pay that, so it shouldn't be on my credit. And that is absolutely not true. That's an agreement between the parties, between you and your ex-spouse. It's not an agreement between you and the lender that you signed that promissory note to. So always remember that you owe the bank unless they agree to take you off that note. So it'll stay on your credit. And the worst thing that we've seen, and Tom, I know I've had to get a phone call from you a couple times where we've had the client come to us well after the divorce is already finished looking for a new house, and they find out not only is that mortgage or that car loan or that credit card still in their name on their credit report and affecting their debt to income ratio, but their spouse who is supposed to be paying it has gone into default and has wrecked their credit. So when you're going through that divorce or you're the attorney writing that court order, make sure to protect your client and talk with Tom. He's the expert on how these things affect credit or things that could go wrong in the future. You don't want to just assume that those payments are being made by your ex-spouse. You need to take control yourself because it could impair your ability to move forward in life. So
yeah, one way to protect, I found everybody involved, is if you pull the credit report and add up all the debt, like that she's paying or he's paying, make that a lump sum and then award it to one or the other to make them responsible to pay it off. And it can be paid off at the refinance, and call it and consider it an equity takeout, a rate, so it could be a rate and term. And that way, those loans or those credit cards and all that debt, that strangling debt, can be paid off and done with, and you can move forward freshly. That's my goal, is try to make sure that they come into agreements with something that's going to help them in the future, not something that's just going to help them right now.
Right. And we're really trying to bookend and put it, help them move on in life instead of consistently dragging these things along with them in life. We've got to put an end to that chapter and be able to not have these things come back and bite us in the future.
Right.
So, are there any specific requirements or conditions that a borrower has to meet to qualify for a loan during the divorce?
First of all, you have to be 18, so hopefully you're not divorced at 18. It's a normal, you have to be 18 to get a loan. The requirements are really the same as Fannie Freddie guidelines. The debt ratios follow the Fannie Freddie rules. Everything, the programs, how you fit into the programs. Job time, you have to have a 2-year work history. Now, if you don't have a 2-year work history, and there's some assets in the divorce, you could set up a distribution. So that gets into quadros, and it gets into IRA distributions where you can show that you're going to get X amount of money for at least a 3-year period, so I can qualify you on that income. So I will help you determine what's available for qualifying income, especially if you're getting back into the workforce, or let's say you have a college degree and you stayed home with the children either, for the last 4 or 5 years. I have to get a work history or job history to have you qualify. And there's several ways that you can do that if there's assets involved in the divorce.
Now, that comes up quite frequently when there's a non-working spouse and they're getting spousal support or child support, and there's a court order that says, all right, they're going to get the house, they're getting the spousal support, but they have to buy the other spouse out in 4 months, 6 months, or a year. What are the qualifications that you can use? How long do they have to have that spousal support consistently going to them before you can count it as income?
A lot of people think it's discretionary with underwriting. The rules are really the Fannie Freddie guidelines. I have trouble understanding them sometimes because I've had underwriters let it go 3 months. I had some underwriters say it has to be 6 months.
Right.
But there's also mitigating factors, or there's also if there's other assets involved. It just depends on a lot of things in the case. But child support, it's got to continue for 3 years to be able to use. So if the children are 17 and it's only going to go for a year, I cannot count that. Sometimes there's Social Security that one's awarded, for a disabled child, and that's a different story because that lasts longer. So, and if they get custody of that child, then I can count that income. So there's just different scenarios that someone really needs to know how to dig into and have the resources to dig into. And that's where, being a certified divorce lending professional, I have those resources.
Right. And again, it's so important before those orders are written that they speak with you, because there's another factor that jumps in there. Even if the spousal support or child support has been in effect for a certain period of time, what we've seen is that there's some trade-offs sometimes, and one spouse will go, well, instead of having to pay this bill, you pay the bill and you don't have to give us the spousal support that month. Or we've also seen it where the other person actually hasn't put the money in the account. They just become behind, or they're behind and they don't pay. The lenders don't care about those situations. If it's not, you're looking at how much has been deposited into an account for a certain period of time, not how long the agreement's been in existence, correct?
Right.
And it can't be interrupted. So if your spouse was supposed to pay you and you swapped some other item for it, then pretty much you're starting the clock all over again on that 6 months, right?
Yeah, you just like in any real estate transaction, side deals, they don't stand.
Yep.
Like if you got a side deal with your ex or your future ex and you're giving them cash outside of what the court order says, that's considered a gift. They're not going to hold you to. They don't care what your word is to the other person's word. It has to be a court order. And if you deviate or do anything outside side deal on the order, it's not going to stick. It's not going to work.
Right. So not only if you're going through the divorce, make sure that you're sticking to the agreements exactly how it was written, right, so you can get your loan, but also before your attorney writes that order, make sure that your attorney knows if you can achieve that order through these qualification
Right.
criteria purposes.
And you said it earlier, getting there early, getting us involved early is impeccable, because they may have an FHA loan that's assumable. So merely whoever's going to retain in
Yes.
the house and the other separating party, a lot of times you're separated for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months before the divorce is final. If the who's going to reside in the house, if they can make payments out of their own checking account, they can show that they're making the payments out of their own checking account without deposits, like cash deposits, then you can actually assume that loan. They may be able to go to the lender they're with and have an FHA or a VA, and they can assume that loan, which is a lot easier qualifying process, and we can walk you through that as well.
Gotcha. That brings us to the next issue that we sometimes see is, and especially in this environment where our interest rates have gone up, they've doubled, if not more, just in the last year and a half.
They have.
So you may have purchased a home or refinanced your loan with your ex-spouse in the last few years, and you have a 3% interest rate, or a two. It was down as low as 2.6 at one point.
Mhm.
And you may have one of those loans, and then all of a sudden rates are hovering really close to 7 now. So if you're trying to refinance, there's a couple things that are happening. One is you're not using all that income. You had two spouses combined used to qualify for that loan in that home. And then now you're looking at interest rates or a payment that could have almost doubled. So sometimes half the income and double the mortgage payment. So that's a huge consideration when you're thinking about buying out your other spouse. So how often and what type of strategies do you implement when you have a client that comes to you in that case?
Well, a lot of times this is where parents get involved. Sometimes I've seen this happen, where they'll co-sign for their daughter or their son and be a non-occupying co-borrower, and we can add them to the loan for the income stability. So that happens more times than not. If a parent or a grandparent's willing to step in, because a lot of times they have their daughter there with their grandkids, or they have their son there with their grandkids, and they say, "Well, I don't have enough income." Well, you can do non-occupancy co-borrowing then, and that's when I would introduce that. Or a lot of times there's a situation where there's equity in the house, and then the departing party departs and says, "Okay, you can have all the equity in the house. Just we'll find a way to get it. Even co-sign on it with one of the parents." Or I've even seen ex-husbands co-sign. Just if the rates are better, it's got to make sense.
Right.
But non-occupying co-borrower to answer your question, is probably one of the things that we do the most.
Gotcha. And then if they just can't qualify on their own, they can't get the
You lay out a map. You say you go back to work, and you got to work for X amount of time. A W-2, or if you're probably not self-employed, it's not a good idea to start a business then. But if they have a profession, or they went to college for something, if they got back in their field, we see a lot of nurses or a lot of dental technicians that, since you went to college for that, I can count that college time for job time, and then I just got to piece together a 2-year work history. It's tough right now to get them qualified, so that's why doing it early, you can lay out a plan and say, you know what, you better tell your attorney that you need 18 months or you need a year before they even mention, putting in the house in your name.
got it. So if that fails, where one spouse is trying to keep the home and refinance it into their own name or buy out the other spouse, the second thing that is a possibility is that they can keep the home and rent it out if they want to move forward. If you have that situation where they just say, you know what, neither one of us can afford this on our own, but what we'll do is we're going to rent the property out and then make sure the mortgage payment is paid on that. How long does that house have to sit there while it's being rented for you to be able to use the rent to offset the debt on that home?
There's a loan out there called a DSCR, a debt service release. But if you have no experience in being an investment, or no experience in having rentals, that's probably not going to work, because you have to have an owner occupied house first, and then you can actually, if you have experience with rentals, you can do a DSCR loan. But at that point, I would recommend them to you, and hopefully you're involved already, to show them the equity in the house and to make an informed decision. I mean,
And
yeah,
it, and it's rare, but we've seen where they've just said we're going to hold on to it. Maybe there's an equity issue. They just purchased the home recently, and they just need a little bit of time behind them to
yeah,
make the numbers work, and get a little bit of appreciation on the property, get a little bit of income to be able to just let the thing settle and then list it after a year or two.
yeah,
But I
that makes
was,
sense. If you can get them to agree upon that, you might be able to get them back together.
yeah. Yeah. And then the ultimate thing is if all else fails, then it's time to sell the house.
Right.
And that's where we step in as certified divorce real estate experts. Tom, you hit it on the head before. We become a third party neutral. It's important that our clients understand that when you're going through a divorce, there are so many situations where um, if you're using a buddy or suggesting that you use a friend from college that's a part-time hairdresser and realtor on the side, and they want to jump into your situation that's specific to a divorce following court orders, making sure attorneys are always kept up to date and abreast of all the information that they need to help their clients, and for the clients to have trust that you're going to be neutral. You have situations where if you are friends with one of the spouses and you're using that person, the other spouse is going to feel like they're not being protected and they're just kind of left out in the cold. So that's where a certified divorce real estate expert steps in. And part of our mission is to be a third party neutral. We don't advocate for one spouse over the other. That is the foundation of what our business is. So making sure that both spouses' interests are being protected and we're maximizing. Our job is number one, sell the house and put as much of that equity back in the pocket of both of the borrowers as possible and do it fairly. So we are a completely different breed of real estate agents, so to speak, where we have the specific knowledge, expertise, and we have a process that we follow every single time. Your process on your transaction has been proven and tested over decades. And the training that we have, and we can speak to your training as well as a certified divorce lending professional. Our training is ongoing. It took 6 months of training just to get our certification. We were interviewed and tested. We don't just get by a certification. This is a rigorous system and platform that we represent. And so you can take it seriously when you see the CDRE or the CDLP certifications. This is years of training, years of expertise, and years of knowledge, and a great process behind it that can assure that you're going to be able to move forward in life. Tell us a little bit about, I just went into some boring details about what we have to go through. You had to go through a lot of training and years of experience just to know what you know about divorce lending.
Right. The years of the training came. I took my training in February, and it was 18 hours of online classes and a pretty tough test at the end. I think I got a 92 on it or something like that. So I missed a couple questions, but the experience that I had in lending for 23 years prior to that, I thought I knew everything. And what this training did, it organizes everything that I've been through and puts it in a format that's easily shared with others. Because you can't really go back and say, I've learned this. This is an old trade secret. There's no such thing as trade secrets. This stuff's documented and it's just pure raw experience. So my experience matched with my training was refreshing because it brought it all together in a way that we can present it to people to help them. And it also, things that I knew that I just knew, it made sense of it. So 18 hours of training, a test at the end. It's not cheap. It's pretty expensive to get certified. But we have ongoing coaching calls every Monday. Jody, the girl that actually put all of this program together, is fantastic. She's on speed dial if I have any questions. So it's worth getting with the expert or someone that takes the time to become an expert.
Great. So let's end with, what advice or tips do you have for an individual considering getting a loan during divorce? What steps do they have?
Step number one, I would get organized and gather any key financial documents. I'll get your everything in a row with what you owe and what you own. I would know what your bills are and what's due, and then I would also kind of get together and create a budget moving forward of what your expenditures are, and then you know, you got to see exactly where you are financially, so you don't have that added stress with the divorce.
Great. And the most important part of that is, how do they get a hold of you?
My number is 859-468-5626. It actually spells "got loan" on your keypad. And or you can go to my webpage, which is 468 loan LOAN .online.
Awesome. So if you are an attorney with a client that is looking to buy out the other spouse, or just starting the divorce and you need to get a picture of where they're currently at, and that they need to be the person that moves on and out of the house, please get a hold of Tom McNamara at Cross Country Mortgage. He had 859-468-5626. I remember that from dialing it over and over and over again.
I've had it 20 years.
Yeah. And also, if you're an attorney and you need that price opinion, any court documents, anything to support you while you're writing those orders and helping your client, please give us a call at Wyndham-Lyons and the Showcase team. My name's Greg Traynor, and you can get in touch with us at 513-468-1911, or look us up on theshowcaseteam.com. And more specifically, if you do need to order those documents, look for Cincy, CINCY, CDRE, Certified Divorce Real Estate Expert, cincycdre.com. You can actually order those documents right online from us. So if you're needing a team to surround you and make sure that in your medium to high conflict divorce cases, that you have professionals representing you and your clients, or you yourself as a borrower or buyer or seller, please give us a call. Again, Greg Traynor with Wyndham-Lyons Realty Services, where passion for real estate will move you. That concludes another one of our great Keeping It Real Estate podcasts with our special guest, Thomas McNamara. Thank you, Tommy.
Thanks, Greg. See you. Have a great weekend.
You too.